the smartest group of kids we could ever ask for this press conference, so thanks for joining us. Yeah, and we're really happy to be here. Listen, I just want to let folks introduce themselves around the table here who've made this moment possible. But I want to start by thanking Diane Rooney, who's the co-founder of this great organization. Thank you. Come on up here, we need you. And Joanne Pillsbury is here as well. Where is she? Did she leave us? Come on up. And thank you for making Heart Works, and for all the great work you're doing with young people. I'm going to start with Secretary Racine. Let's go around and introduce ourselves and explain why we're here.
Okay, I'm Doug Racine. I'm the Secretary of the Agency of Human Services, and that's where the Department for Children and Families resides, and that's where all these programs reside with all that related to development.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Andrews. I serve the community of Essex Town as the superintendent, and I can't think of a greater investment of taxpayers' dollars than investing in the learning for and teaching of young children. So glad to be here.
Thank you.
Hi, Manuela Fonseca. I'm the Early Education Coordinator at the Agency of Education, and I help to oversee the implementation of pre-K and also up to grade 3.
Terrific.
And I'm Karen Edwards. I'm the Director of the Pre-K through Middle Division at the Agency of Education, and I do my best to support Manuela in her work.
All right.
I'm Reva Murphy. I work for the Department for Children and Families, and the Agency of Human Services, and we co-administer pre-K and work on community partnerships and quality.
Way to go.
John Fisher, Deputy Commissioner at the Agency of Education, and we're excited to have another education initiative such as this kicking off this year.
Thanks for your great work on this one.
Hi, I'm Eddie Gale. I'm with the A.D. Henderson Foundation, and it's one of the founders of the Vermont Community Preschool Collaborative, which we'll be talking about.
And you're going to hear from Eddie in a minute.
And I'm Sherry Carlson, and I'm a consultant with the Vermont Community Preschool Collaborative.
Mark Sustick, also from the Vermont Community Preschool Collaborative Project. My name is Dan House. I'm on the Essex Town School Board.
Welcome, Dan.
Thank you.
And thanks all for joining us. We all know that and Tim German is here, by the way, representative, big supporter of early childhood education. Thank you, Tim, for joining us. We all know that in order to ensure that these extraordinarily beautiful kids in front of us have a bright future in Vermont, that the best investment we can make is ensuring that they have quality early childhood education early, and that we give every child in Vermont the opportunity to have a strong start. All the evidence reminds us that when we invest in early childhood education, when we put our dollars where our mouths have been, our kids have a bright future, they learn more successfully, they ensure that we end up with kids that do well in our education system, thrive in our education system. And in a state that now has the 4th lowest unemployment rate in America, where our employers are desperate for young people to do the jobs that we have, we cannot make a better investment in our jobs future than we do in early childhood education. So I'm delighted to be here with the team that just introduced themselves. As we're going to hear shortly from Eddie Gale, from Mark Andrews. I want to give a special thanks to Rick Davis, who's co-founder of the Permanent Fund, and Mark Sustick, who is with the Preschool Collaborative. This is a real collaboration between the state and generous private sector organizations that are working hard to ensure that we have a strong pre-K system in Vermont. Dan House, Essex Town School Board, is doing an extraordinary job, and Lisa Zenglowski, who's the site director here at HeartWorks. We should have given her a shout out too. This is all about taking $400,000 that we have identified at the Department of Education, and I want to thank our Secretary, Villaseca, as well as the team of the Department of Education working together with us on this, to ensure that we match state dollars with the private sector dollars that Rick Davis, the Permanent Fund, and the Coalition has been working together on to get more kids into early childhood education. What this $400,000 matched with private sector generosity is going to do for us is allow us to ensure that at least 12 communities in Vermont will have expanded child care opportunities in quality places like this organization here at HeartWorks. Bottom line is, this $400,000 is going to buy access to early childhood education for the towns of Essex Town, Berry City, Pittsford, Bennington, Danville, Hartford, Heinsberg, Lindenville, Milton, Pownell, Rutland, Central, and Woodford. We all know that we're doing well in Vermont, but we want to do even better. It's important to know that right now, 70% of Vermont's 13,000 preschool eligible children have access to preschool. That's a great accomplishment. Our job is to get the other 30%. We know that every dollar we spend on early childhood education saves us $7 later on, but most importantly, and this is what really matters, forget the dollars. What really matters is that it gives our kids an opportunity to have a successful life. We know that we invest in early childhood education, it avoids incarceration and other expenses later on. It gives kids a bright future and a bright start. So I'm delighted to be here with the team who has made this public-private partnership possible. And let's continue on the great work and the great progress that we're making. I want to introduce now Eddie Gale, who's with the Preschool Collaborative, and can talk a little bit about how we're doing and how we got here. Take it away.
Thanks, Governor. I definitely appreciate and want to thank the Governor's leadership on this. I'm with the program director with the A.D. Henderson Foundation. We've been working with the Permanent Fund for Vermont's Children and 16 other philanthropic supporters over the course of the last 8 years to find a way to support expansion and increased access to publicly supported preschool in Vermont. Now, one of the things that happened when this governor took office is his administration came to us. We've been at this for 6 years at that time, and essentially told us, how can we get this done? And so that was a great word for us. This $400,000 that he's putting into the effort that we're working on this year is going to essentially double our efforts in being able to expand preschool. Just wanted to share quickly, why are we doing this? And really I'd say there's 3 reasons. First off, something that's a little complicated to understand is that there's a quirk in the way that the Vermont Education Fund funds preschool. It's entirely allowable, but for the first 2 years, if you don't have an existing preschool program in your community, then there is no money for you. And so what this group of philanthropists has decided to do is that if a community wants to start up a new program, we would pay those costs. And then after a 2-year period, the way students are counted on through the preschool census, then the education fund would pay for that. So we've been doing that, carrying that weight for about 8 years, and now we've got this other support from the Agency of Education, and we're extremely thankful for that. Second reason why we do this is that I don't believe there's a parent who doesn't want their child ready to learn when they enter kindergarten. It's really that simple, and the preponderance of evidence and research shows that a high-quality preschool experience is going to create gains for all children. It's going to create the greatest gains for children at risk, but any child is going to have a benefit from that kind of experience. And then finally, over 70% of Vermont's children are in the care of someone other than their parents during the course of the workday, and it's because their parents are working. So a lot of parents don't have the option of accessing a school-based preschool program that might meet for 2 hours a day. They need childcare that lasts the whole day. So a big premise of the Vermont Community Preschool Collaborative has been to build partnerships between public schools and between private childcare providers, such as this one here at HeartWorks, so that parents can know their children have quality childcare the entire day. Their children are getting that kind of play-based preschool experience that is going to leave them ready to learn when they enter kindergarten. And it's also going to increase the quality of the child care center that's receiving those funds from the state, because it's going to lift the entire quality of care for all children at that center. So those are the 3 reasons why we're doing that. Just one, to mention sort of a vote of confidence. Over the last 8 years, we've had 18 different philanthropic supporters participating in this, including the Anderson Foundation, the Permanent Fund, the Vermont Children's Trust Fund, the Turl Fund, Arnold and Virginia Gallaudet's. I can go on and name a number of others, the United Ways, the Wyndham Foundation, the Johnson Family Foundation, the Vermont Community Foundation, and there are some others from outside the state who have thought this is important. And now I believe it's extremely important that the state of Vermont is also pitching in at the level that it's doing. So we're extremely thankful, and we think we're going to have universal access to preschool in Vermont before very long. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Eddie. Mark Andrews, if you're willing, as superintendent, to say a word or two, then
Well, thanks, Governor.
come on up here to the mic so they get mad at me. Yeah.
I don't want to repeat what you've already heard. Again, as my opening remarks, I can't think of a better investment that we're making in young peoples and their learning. As a practitioner here in Vermont over 35 years, as a teacher, as a consultant, as an administrator, and now as a superintendent, I've seen time and time again the benefit that early education provides our young children and families. I want to thank the leadership of the collaborative. Without their help and their guidance, we wouldn't have been able to start on this journey together. We've now at the point after 3 years of implementation that we're starting to see the financial benefits as well, which is very, very encouraging. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that we are a data-driven society, and we're looking at data very closely in terms of children's readiness into kindergartens in Essex Town, and I can tell you without hesitation that the data are suggesting that their readiness is so much greater now, having the access that they do to quality preschool experiences. I want to thank HeartWorks and our other 8 partners that we work with in Essex Town, who is providing parents with many, many options other than the center-based program that we're also very proud of in Essex Town, but providing options around this catchment area and has also provided better access for mom and dad who are on their way to work or running errands or whatever they're doing around town.
Hey, thanks for your great work. Appreciate it. I also want to welcome Sarah Buxton. Resident Sarah Buxton has joined us since we started warming up. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your great help with this bill. Serves on the Education Committee. Does a great job. And Cheryl Mitchell, who's been fighting the child care battle for years and years and years and continues to help us expand access and do great things. So thanks. Fired up if you've... did I forget anybody? No? Anyone else want to say anything?
Or Diane, how about you?
Yeah, that's
Yes,
what we're doing.
Diane, let's have Diane.
Come on. HeartWorks, talk to us.
Well, we're pleased to have you all here today, and the children have an opportunity to also meet the governor, which is a special time. And we, Louise and I, my business partner Louise Pichet, we've been doing this now for 25 years, and it's been a great journey for us. And we have this preschool here, but also one in Shelburne and in Burlington. We have over 150 families that participate in the partnership. It's been a real benefit to many families who couldn't access quality preschool ahead of this initiative. So it's allowed them to come both to us and to other good programs that are in this area. We also feel it's really helped to raise the professional standard within the industry, which has changed a lot over the 25 years that we've been doing this. And I know there are other folks here who know that as well, like Jim Squires, who's in the back here. But I think years ago when we first started, many teachers felt that in order to feel like a validated professional, they needed to move on to public school teaching. And that's no longer the case. I think people now feel as though if your call is to work with early childhood education, that not only are you validated as a teacher, but that you're also seen as an important professional in the lives of children. And we've always felt that children needed to have additional assistance as they grow and develop, and that if they're in a good environment, that it's a win situation for everybody. So we're really glad to have you here today. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Anything you want to add?
Oh, no, I think Diane has said it, but...
Great. Now listen, I'm watching them yawn, and if you want to stay around,
They want strawberries and
they want
cheese.
to. Yeah. So if you have questions, fire it up, team.
Vermont has 70% of kids with access to childcare now. How does that rank among other states, do you know?
I know that we rank very high, but I can't tell you how high. Who can?
Jim Squires could, or I could try.
Actually, Vermont ranks first for combined 3- and 4-year-old percentage served. It ranks within the top 3 or 4 for 4-year-olds as well, so it's definitely a leader.
We are definitely one of the top ranking states in the country in terms of access to early childhood education. Our job is to get the 30% in that currently don't have access.
How does availability compare to enrollment? Meaning it's available to
Right.
70% of kids, what's the enrollment for kids that are eligible?
I don't know the answer to that.
That's the kids that are participating. That is the enrollment.
That is the enrollment.
That is-
We have 70% in now. I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. We have 70% in now. We want to get the other 30%. We want every kid in Vermont, every young person in Vermont to have a strong start to strong early childhood education. That's our goal.
For the 30%, is the problem mainly just a child care center doesn't exist in their community, or is the problem mainly that you know, their parents can't afford to pay for childcare, even with a state subsidy, or what are the barriers for the other 30%?
The biggest challenge is affordability. Parents are working hard. This is often parents who either work 2 jobs if there's 2 parents, or have 1 parent and is working 1 job in single-parent families. And the challenge is that childcare is expensive without state help. And the beauty of this commitment is that we're combining state dollars with private sector dollars, generous donors, to maximize our opportunity to expand early childhood education.
Does anyone know the average cost now with state subsidy and then without?
Want to take that?
The average cost of a childcare slot is around $8,000 to $10,000 for a preschool age child. We subsidize at about $6,000 a year. That's an annual cost for a full year cost. Pre-K would be less because if you just had pre-K alone, it would be a less slot. But one of the goals that we have is that good programs like these can combine resources like childcare subsidy and pre-K and parent tuition to create and sustain good programs for all the kids. So that's where we're trying to go.
So with the subsidy, then the cost to the parent would be, if it's 8 to 10 for a total cost, 2 to 4 thousand.
It could be, depending on, that varies
Right.
quite a lot on the fee that the provider charges and whether or not they charge a copay to the parents. So that varies.
Can you explain what this money might do, for example, in Essex? Does it take you from one number to another of slots available? Does it make it cheaper for parents? What's the net impact
Who wants
of this money?
You know, I work with Heartworks, and in working with the program originally, which was 20 years ago, Vermont is just an absolutely marvelous place to have early child care programs. And it also, one thing about it is that if we charge what the service is worth, there are many people who can afford good child care, even at $8,000 and $10,000, if that would be for full child care. So many families can afford that in Vermont, especially in some of the areas of Vermont. Then there's entire other populations that cannot afford that. So Heartworks dedicated itself to saying, let's be sure to charge what the service is worth. So those people who pay and can afford to pay that. Then what we do is, in this case, for the 4 schools that we have, we give this year, for example, $240,000 in scholarships. That means that $240,000 is not collected. So whatever a person can afford to pay, we work it out so that those children can come. And there's a benefit to doing that, which is to say, charge what the service is worth, which gives teachers 5 to 6 weeks of paid vacation a year, gives them benefits, you get good professionals without turnover. And then those monies help to really subsidize the children or the families who can't afford to pay. Now that the state of Vermont has this program, it's been a great boon with the assistance that we give and then the assistance that others are giving with the state program. It really makes for quite a wonderful mixture of children. And they all have access to it.
And your question, for Essex Town, it'll expand by 15 the number of children that are eligible, and I think it brings your total to 67.
And where within the Agency of Education is this money coming from?
Well, do you want to answer that? I mean,
Retest from some early education funds that we had, that the investment here was doubling our use of and impact of the funds.
and I announced this in my budget address, so this isn't new news. We identified $400,000 in my budget address that would be leveraged with private sector money to help expand early child education.
So this is a line item in the budget then?
No, it's money that we had that we identified within the current Department of Education that we allocated for this purpose. So it wasn't passed, it wasn't authorized through legislation.
So what's it going to take to get the rest of the way, do you think? What's the hurdle?
You know, the real hurdle is money. And as I said in my budget address, we proposed, as you know, the biggest single investment in early childhood education in the history of the state. It was $17 million. We all know that our funding source wasn't embraced, so we're going to be working together with those that are so committed to making this happen to see if we can find another way to skin the cat. But we've got to be able to match our rhetoric with a financial commitment to ensure that every Vermont kid gets a strong start.
Will we hear more about that or a
Yeah,
plan B in January?
I would hope so. We're working hard with legislators and with, the child care community to try to come up with a way to make a stronger start than the one we're announcing now. This is good progress, but it's not enough.
Reba, one more question on affordability to parents. Is the subsidy, you said up to $6,000, is that based on a sliding scale, or?
It is a sliding fee scale, so parents can get anywhere from 100% of the subsidy to 10% on a sliding fee scale based on their income.
And what's the impact of having a second or third kid in that?
You can get a subsidy for every child, and so it's a per child subsidy, so we pay that. If you have 100%, you get 100% of the subsidy for each of your children that you have enrolled in care.
Based on income.
Based on income, right. So that goes to each child.
Quick thought on the 70% thing. Even in the K through 12 range, there's a very robust homeschool movement in Vermont, and so my thought is 100% isn't even realistic or necessarily a goal, I wouldn't think, because some parents will choose to keep their kids at home for homeschooling. Obviously, this program is focused on helping subsidize a facility like Heartworks here. Is there any thought or attempt to work with the homeschool community, as we do in the older grades, to help ready those kids for kindergarten